all the time. You never know what he's going to say, what he's going to do. And for those of you who are trying to do the math, they are 8 years, 11 months, 1 day, and about 5.5 hours apart. I always say that having a preschooler and a middle schooler at the same time is God's way of showing he has a sense of humor. And if you going through these stages, understand what I mean. Felix is our preschooler. He is in that stage of wonder. You know, everything is new. There's tons of questions, why? When it comes to his faith, he's learning that Jesus loves him and wants to be his forever friend, and he thinks that's the coolest thing ever. In fact, any of you who've ever worked with preschoolers in the church know that when you ask them the question, no matter what it is, the answer is Jesus. How are you today? Jesus! What did you do this weekend? Jesus! And to me, that's really cool, and we're going to get to that in a little while. Wolf is our middle schooler. Middle school's kind of that crazy age. They're looking for affirmation. They look for affirmation from adults, from their peers. They just want to know where they fit in. And as they grow and they learn, they want to know where they fit in and where they fit in with their faith. And at the same time, any of you who have middle schoolers or are middle school teachers, if you're a middle school teacher, God bless you. Like, I truly believe that when we get to heaven, they're going to be like, you're a middle school teacher, here you go. You get this special chair to sit in. But if you know middle schoolers, you know sometimes they walk around in this fog. It's just not quite knowing what's ahead of them, and it may be more middle school boys, that's what I have. But I asked a friend one day who's a middle school math teacher. I was like, Sarah, hey, you work with kids. You're a middle school math teacher. You're a children's pastor. Clue me in. Is it just something I deal with in my house? And she said, no, Michele, they do walk in a fog. I was like, cool. Help me. What is this? Axe body spray. Yeah. If you have never experienced Axe body spray, you are a very lucky person. I don't purchase it for my son, but he came home the other day reeking of it. Some of you, if you're my Facebook friends, you saw that I posted. I was downstairs, he was upstairs, and my eyes were still watering. It's nuts. But Wolf is at this crazy age. He's looking for affirmation. At the same time, he's looking to see who he is. When my kids were younger, people would tell me, my mom would tell me, hey, just take it slow, because the days are going to go fast. Cherish every moment. And I thought, you know what? No, I've got them for 18 plus years. That's a long time. But it really isn't. In fact, 243. 243 weeks. That's all I have with Wolf until he graduates high school. When you think about it, that's not a lot. 243 weeks to make sure everything I want him to know and learn is crammed into that time. And when you break that down, of those 243 weeks, 40 hours a year will be spent within the church. That's it. So now more than ever, I'm trying to embrace Wolf and just lead him and guide him. And I can't do it by myself. We've been lucky enough to have other friends and parents and coaches and church leaders along the way who've grasped arms with us. And when my kids were younger, I would pray for them as they were born, and I prayed about two things. I wanted my kids to be compassionate, to know that we need to love everybody. We may not like everybody, because let's be real, we may not. But every single person on this earth was put here by God. And because he loves us, we need to love one another. I also prayed that my children be courageous, that no matter what life brings them, they have the courage to stand upon their faith and know that they have a Savior who loves them and that died for them, and that they will stand up and say, I am a Christ follower, and I am proud of it. Well, in just a couple of weeks, Wolf's going to do just that. He's going to stand up on the stage with Pastor Craig, and he's going to be baptized. And as much as I would like to take the credit for that, because, hey, your mom's a children's pastor, she did all that, it wasn't me. In fact, I can probably tell you it was 95% not me. It was the people who took time to love him, to embrace him. It was the pastors along the way, and we've had several, we've moved a lot, that took time to know him. Now more than ever, my son needs his church family. He needs his church family to wrap their arms around him. In fact, every child in our church needs that. You see, it's no secret that most kids, by the time they get to high school, they start questioning their faith. And a lot of them, when they leave their parents' house for college, they'll turn their back on the church forever. It's sad, but it's true. They have things pulling at them in all directions. And if we don't wrap our arms around our children now, collectively as a church, and show them we love you, we want you, then we risk them turning their backs. When I was interviewing for this job, Craig had asked me, hey, what is it you see? What is it you want for these kids? And I told him two things. I want every kid who walks through the door at Water's Edge, no matter what they're going through, who they are, what their lot in life is, to know they belong here. It's as simple as that. You belong here. And I want every child who walks through the doors of this church to know that they have a God that loves them and that he loves them so much, he gave his son for them. That there's no greater love than that. And I want them to know that because they see it in every single person they encounter. You see, people disciple people. It's not the programs. I can run a VBS every day of the week. Craig can preach and preach and preach. Chad can have tons of youth events. But in the end, it's the people who disciple the people. And now, more than ever, we need to disciple to our kids. Now, we're lucky. We have an amazing church. Our kids are involved. We constantly interact with one another. A few weeks ago, it just blew my mind listening to Craig do confirmation, because for each child that came on that stage, he had a story. He had a connection. Guys, I've been in a lot of churches, big and small, and I have never seen that. I've never seen a pastor connect to the kids in the church the way Craig does. But you know what? It takes more than Craig. It takes more than Chad. It takes more than myself. It takes all of you. We need to open our arms, just like a mom opens her arms to her kids, and wrap them up around us. But how do we do that? Well, most of you are thinking this is going to be a sermon about volunteering. I'll get to that, but I will tell you this. I know that not everyone is wired to serve with kids, but everyone is wired to serve kids. Every single one of us. But how do we welcome them? And better yet, how do we welcome them for real? How do we create this place where our kids know, this is my place, this is my church, this is my family? Well, we listen. You see, in Matthew 19, that was just read, Jesus had been teaching to a group of people, like he often did. There were tons of people there. And all of a sudden, all these parents show up with their kids. Think about any time you've been out to dinner or somewhere, kid-free if you're a parent. You get one of those awesome date nights where you just kind of sit and you're not quite sure what to do because there's no kids around you. Do you guys have those? Well, think about that moment that mom comes in with her 3 or 4 kids. It gets loud. It gets messy. And in many times it gets smelly. And right about then, you're thinking, there goes date night, or there goes my night out. I think that's kind of how the disciples felt. They were tired, they were cranky, and all of a sudden these people show up with their kids. And so in their mind, they're like, it's just a bunch of little kids. Jesus doesn't have time for them. So he tells them, take them away. The disciples say, take those kids away. Get them out of here. We don't want them here. But Jesus stops them. Jesus stops them and he tells them, no. Let the little children come to me. Jesus wanted to be with those kids. Jesus loves those kids. Jesus wants our kids here with us. Now, it sounds easy. Welcome the kids into the church. Hey, we do that. We have children's ministry. We have youth ministry. We welcome the kids into church. Yes, we do. We have some amazing ministries, if I don't say so myself. But think about those Sundays, the Sundays I like to refer to as family worship Sundays. You know the ones where preschoolers on up come to church. The Sundays that the moms and dads are probably calling, why is she making us do this? The Sundays that those of you who may not have children spend with your head turned around, wondering where that noise or that smell is coming from. Yeah, those Sundays. Those are my favorite Sundays because I love watching families worship together. I love seeing the little ones on up to the seniors in high school standing there with their parents worshiping together. It was about 5 years ago, and I had just started a job at a church in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was brought in to rebuild the ministry. They had some things that happened, and they asked me to come in and rebuild it. So one of the first things I did was implement Family Worship Sunday. Seemed like a no-brainer to me. That first Family Worship Sunday, I was the least popular person in that church. The week before it, my email went nuts. My cell phone went nuts. Sunday morning rolls around, I'm getting eye rolls, dirty looks. Senior pastor's getting an earful, so much so that he pulls me aside before the service and says, we need to talk on Monday. That's never a good sign, especially when you're the newbie. Well, my son Wolf and I took our seats in the back, and this dad in front of me stands up before the service when it's all nice and quiet, that couple of minutes before the music starts, and asks, who is the moron who thought it was a good idea for me to bring my 3-year-old to church? He doesn't know anything, and he's not going to get it. So, I just tapped him on the shoulder. Hey, moron here. That's me. Gave his little boy a fist bump. And I just told him, look, I know you're upset. I know this is new, but just wait. Wait and see what happens. I could be wrong. It happens. And I fully admit when I'm wrong, but I'm praying I'm right. Well, before I get to the end of the story, I want to jump back to Matthew chapter 18. Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. Jesus had been asked, who is the greatest? Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And his answer was kids. And he's telling them, look, if you want to be like that, humble yourself. Have a faith like a child. That's why I called this sermon Forever Young, because it is my dream that every child in this church stays forever young in his or her faith. Now, the last line of that verse is what I want to go back to. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. When you welcome a child, you welcome Jesus. That's what he's saying. When you welcome a child, you welcome God. When you open your arms to a child, you open your arms to me. Why? Jump back to Genesis, when God created everything. If you remember what he said when he created man, he created him in whose image? God's. Every single one of us is created in God's image. Every single child in this church is created in God's image. When you stop and think about that, I mean, it's a bold statement, but stop and think about that. Every child is created in God's image. When we see kids, we see God. When we welcome kids, we welcome God. That kid sitting at the donut table with chocolate all over his face and sprinkles everywhere, guess what? He was made in the image of God, sprinkles and all. Now, as I watched this dad and his son worship that Sunday, I saw a typical 3-year-old. He was twirling in the aisle, jumping up and down, pulling on dad. But I also saw a little boy stand and raise his arms in worship. I saw a little boy bow his head in prayer. I saw a little boy lean in because he wanted to hear what the pastor had to say. And as the service ended, I heard a little boy say, "Daddy, can you read that story to me when we get home?" That little boy who Dad proclaimed didn't know anything, he knew a lot. And when we start to look at kids and realize they are made in God's image, we can start to realize that they are capable of so much more we give them credit for. They can love. They can serve. They can receive God. When I teach the kids in church, one of the first things I tell them about the Bible is it's not a storybook. Because growing up, what do we hear about? Bible stories. It's not a storybook, it's a history book. And when kids start to grasp that it's a history book, it makes it real and tangible. But even better is what I tell them next. This is a history book. It's my history, and it's your history. The things you're learning about, it's for you. It's not just for the grown-ups in church. And I think sometimes we get caught up in sending our kids off to Sunday school, and then we come to big church, and there's a disconnect there. And I'm not saying we don't need to have Sunday school, because then I want to have a job, and I love what I do. But when we have kids in church, we need to welcome them. They're not just something that hinder what we get to listen to. They're here to learn too. They can learn and they can grasp. We also have kids who want to serve within our church. And I like to observe things on Sunday mornings. Sometimes I'll sit and check in and I just kind of watch. And I'll see some of our teenagers who serve, and I see them over here doing their thing, and I see the adults way over here doing their thing. And there is no in between. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens. What if on Sundays we saw our adults and our youth together? What if you're serving at the donut table with a youth, instead of letting them stay over there, you go over, "Hey, how was your week? What's going on in your world? Good job with the donuts. Way to keep them separated," or whatever it is they do at the donut table. What if, when we greet people as they come into the church, what if instead of just greeting up here, where the adults are, we greet down here, where the kids are? What if we say hi to mom and dad, And instead of letting them go on about their way, we reach down. Hey, how are you today? I'm so glad you're here. This place is for you. We have a youth that serves in our children's ministry. We have a lot of youth that serve in our children's ministry. They are some of the most awesome volunteers we have. And this past Sunday, I got to go to one of them's graduation party. Yesterday. And as I'm there, I'm watching all these people come in and out, some familiar faces from church. But what struck me were all the little kids there. There were a ton of them at a high school senior's graduation party. And a lot of them were faces I knew from here. And each one of them, as the minute they hit the ground, big hugs. I love you. I love you so much. Thanks for being here. My son was one of them. They have made the connection with her because as a senior in high school, she's connected with those kids. She shows up on Sunday, and she's not just teaching them out of the Bible. She's showing them what it means to be loved. Because of what she does, those kids are seeing God's love. You see, kids don't always remember what we say, but they remember how we make them feel. So next Sunday, when you're here or when you leave today, welcome those kids. Take time to get to know them. When you're sitting having donuts, don't shy away from the messy-faced 4-year-old that has sprinkles everywhere. Go sit with them. Get some sprinkles on you. Sprinkles make everything better. Take time to get to know them. Another thing we need to do to make sure our kids know they are welcome is we need to say yes to them. More specifically, we need to say yes to the tension that comes with kids, from the little bitties to the senior and high schools. You see, having kids and being around kids, tension comes with that. There's a give and take that's constantly like this, especially as they get to those middle school and high school years. I know because I'm experiencing it. Every day is like this at my house. There are days when my husband comes home from work and I'm in tears. And he's like, what is going on? I don't know. It's one of those, they're your children. You did this. We do have those conversations quite often. But, you know, as much as I want to tell Wolf, my 13-year-old, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be in middle school. I know what it's like to be in 7th grade. I don't. I have no clue. And unless you're recently out of high school, you don't either. Because you and I didn't have this 20 years ago. We didn't have the world at our fingertips 20 years ago, or however long ago you got out of high school. I'm old, I'll admit it. You see, our kids, with a swipe of a finger, have access to things you and I could have never dreamed about seeing. With the swipe of the finger, their entire world can be put online for someone to see, whether they want to or not. With a swipe of a finger, they're being subjected to things like cyberbullying. When I was a kid, my bullies did it face to face. They didn't hide behind a screen name or a fake Facebook site. And as a mom, you know, I think, well, you know what? If I just wrap Wolf up in my arms, wrap him in bubble wrap, I won't expose him to those things, it'll be fine. But I'm wrong. Listen to this from Romans. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. I'll go back to that. By testing you, discern what is the will of God. We tell our kids to go out and be in the world, but not of it. But so many times, we don't let them be in the world. It says here, you're going to be tested, and through those tests and those trials, that's how you'll know what the will of God is. You'll see God in those trials. Guys, and our kids, they're going through things you and I never imagined. The kids in our church, we don't know all their stories. And I'm sure many of them would bring us to our knees. But we have to let them live. We have to say yes to this tension that, yes, you are going to go out and you're going to experience these things. I'm not saying giving them carte blanche, because we can't do that either. We can't just let them run free willy. But we can let them experience things. And then, when they fall, we catch them. As a church, we say, it's okay. You messed up, but it's okay. Your past does not define your future. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. She's not perfect. We're not perfect people. It's okay. When I was a kid, I loved nursery rhymes, just the sing-songiness of it. And there was one that bothered me more than anything else. Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Let's back up. He was a giant egg. You're telling me all the king's horses and all the king's men didn't notice this giant egg sitting up on this ledge? Hello. And better yet, even if they saw him, they didn't think, oh, he's an egg. He's going to hit the ground and shatter. Maybe we should catch him. Nope. He fell. And they said, too bad for that one. But what if we as a church, what if we, all the king's horses and all the king's men, were waiting at the bottom of that wall? And when they fall, because they will, every child's going to fall, we catch them. We don't let them just shatter and say, too bad for that one. We catch them and say, it's okay. Children will see and know God's love because they see it in the adults around them. They will know what it means to have a Savior who loves them because each and every one of you in here today shows them. They may not remember what it is we say. They may not remember what it is they read. They'll remember how we made them feel. And when we open our arms, realize these kids are made in the image of God and that God gave them to us to care for. And that we need to step up and show them that love time and time again. Then, as they grow older, when they graduate high school, they won't turn their backs on the church. They'll hold strong to that forever young faith that they had as little bitty kids. They'll know Jesus is the answer for everything. One other way we reach our kids, we serve them. And some of you just had an inward groan. This is where she gets to volunteering. Yeah, a little bit. If any of you have ever felt the call to serve in children or youth ministries, there's a reason why God put that on your heart. And we make excuses all day long about why we can't do it. I did it. I felt the call way before I had kids. Day after day, year after year, I made excuses. Don't let what is in the here and now affect what's really important. I had a guy at a church that he wanted to volunteer. You know, he would email me weekly, text me weekly, "Hey, I want to volunteer." Sweet. Let's get you hooked up. Let's get you in there. Well, I have a problem. I don't want to miss church. Okay. Well, we have 4 services. Yeah, but I really like the 10:30 service. Okay, yeah, that's a good one, you know. 9 o'clock's over, that's kind of the rehearsal service. 10:30, the preacher's really on. It's not the evening, so he's tired. Yeah, I can get that. But if you're just serving twice a month, could you miss that twice a month? Well, I don't know. I don't feel good about doing that. Well, this was in Arkansas, and much like you Husker fans, Razorback fans are fanatical about Razorback football. And I know this guy was a Razorback fan. You could kind of tell by the fact that his truck was adorned with Razorbacks. Like, he had one of those films that went around his car. And so I asked him, I said, "Okay, so you won't miss the 10:30 service to serve in children's ministry, even though you've felt the call, but you'll miss every Sunday during football season to call the Hogs." I'm not knocking on you football fans. I'm a football fan myself. But we have to make a decision and realize what's important versus what's just kind of a passing fancy. The Huskers are going to have losing seasons. They're going to change coaches. They're going to do all this kind of crazy stuff. One day, I hate to say this, but they may not even be around. You can tell I'm not a Husker fan. But you know what? Our kids will be here. And they need you. So if you felt that tug at your heart, don't ignore it. Don't make any more excuses. Those of you who are serving, thank you. I know it's a job that is often thankless. You don't get to see the fruits of your labor. You spend Sunday mornings wiping faces, running kids to the bathroom, listening to the 4th and 5th graders talk about goodness knows what. You probably know more about the crushes in that age with the girls than anything else. And you wonder, am I making a difference? You are. Because years down the road, someone's going to stand on a stage just like this. And they're going to start off by saying, "When I was a little kid in Sunday school, a week and a half ago, I was in Atlanta, Georgia for a conference. And it was a conference for children's and youth ministers. And amongst the 7,000 people there was a 15-year-old girl. This 15-year-old girl had been one of my kids back in Little Rock. She had been part of a Bible study that I did on Sunday nights. And I'm going to be real with you guys, I hated that Bible study. It drained me more than anything else. It was a bunch of 5th graders. And we were doing a study on the armor of God. And we spent most of our time talking about Justin Bieber, who had a crush. It was like 6 girls, 1 boy, awkwardness all around. And I would go home every day and wonder, why am I doing this? Sundays are long days as it is. The kids wouldn't notice. If I just canceled it, they wouldn't care. But God told me that was not what I was supposed to do. So I stuck with it. Fast forward to this conference, 15-year-old girls there who had been part of my Bible study. We go out for dinner, and we just get to talking about why she's there. It's kind of weird for a 50-year-old to spend a week with a bunch of adults, even though we tend to act like kids. You know, she had finals. She took a week off. She saved her own money to go to this. And I wasn't quite prepared for what she said. She said, "I'm here because of you. You took time to show us love each week. You sat with us and you listened to us. And because of you, we knew there was a God. And I want to show other kids that." You guys may not get to hear that, but the stories are out there, and what you do matters. Now, some of you are like, that's great, but I don't like kids. They scare me. That's fine too. You can still serve them. In fact, we can all serve them in the same way. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask for your time. And everyone just groaned inwardly. I'm going to ask you for your time and your commitment. In front of me, looks like a big mess, but each one of these colored cards in front of me has the name of a child who has been in this church. From babies in our nursery on up to senior and high schools. Before we started the 9 o'clock service, there was about 600 of these here. I want you today, as a church family, to make a commitment to pray for these kids. I read somewhere that prayer is the greatest tool God has given us for missions, and I believe that. For a kid to know that their church is praying for him makes all the difference. For my son to know that he has a church family that is wrapping their arms around him and praying every single day, it makes a difference. So in just a minute, I'm going to ask all the adults, and actually, we'll just let everyone do it. Come grab a card. When you get home, put that somewhere where you're going to see it day in and day out. Hang it on your bathroom mirror, put it on the dashboard of your car, wherever you're going to see it. And commit to pray for that child every single day. If you're a guest and your child's name may not be down here, there are some Sharpies and cards. Write them down. We want to pray for them too. If you know a child that just needs prayer, write them down. We may not all be wired to serve with the kids, but we're wired to serve the kids.